I think I put on about 10 kilos just to eat your food.
You can try this one. This is my favorite.
Okay, one more. But I can't eat anymore. Okay, one more.
I'm Katie Wilson and you're watching A News. Let's see the headlines for this evening. The US marks its 250th birthday with fireworks, flyovers and extreme weather. Thousands gather for the second day of Khamenei's funeral ceremony in Iran. And Pakistan is reportedly set to host the next round of US-Iran talks on July the 11th. Thanks for joining us. A landmark anniversary was celebrated across the United States as millions gathered to mark 250 years since the nation's founding. From Washington to New York, the day featured ceremonies, military displays and spectacular fireworks.
The United States celebrated the 250th anniversary of its independence with nationwide events, including parades, concerts, military flyovers and fireworks displays, marking a milestone in the country's history. In Washington, D.C., celebrations were briefly interrupted after thunderstorms forced the evacuation of the National Mall. Crowds later returned as President Donald Trump delivered a delayed speech honoring U.S. veterans and reflecting on the country's 250-year history.
Because this is the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, nothing like it. For 2.5 centuries, our American republic has stood as the crowning achievement of human history. This country is the home of freedom. This is the land of liberty. And this is a flag that's the banner of the most extraordinary, most exceptional, most incredible nation ever to exist on the face of the earth. And we're doing better now than we've ever done before.
Alongside patriotic themes, Trump also touched on politics, renewing his support for the Save America Act, which would require proof of citizenship and voter identification in federal elections. He also repeated his criticism of communism, saying America would never become a communist country. Following the address, the Capitol hosted one of its largest ever fireworks displays, while military aircraft, including the Blue Angels, performed flyovers above the city. Celebrations extended far beyond Washington. New York hosted a maritime parade with tall ships and naval vessels from around the world before lighting up its skyline with fireworks. Despite extreme heat and severe storms disrupting events in several cities, millions of Americans joined celebrations commemorating 250 years of US independence.
A late-night shooting on the 4th of July holiday has left multiple people injured in New York City's Coney Island neighbourhood. Police recovered firearms and investigations are underway. At least 8 people, including 4 children, were injured in the attack. All were taken to hospital. 7 were reported in a stable condition, whilst a 21-year-old woman remains in a critical condition. Police say no arrests have been made yet. Tens of thousands of mourners performed the funeral prayers for Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and members of his household, who were killed on the first day of the Israeli-US war with Iran. A News' correspondent Taraz Shiralilu reports from Tehran's Grand Musalla Prayer Hall.
Reporting from Tehran's Grand Musalla, where the funeral prayers of the former Supreme Leader of Iran, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei, as well as his daughter, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, and granddaughter were performed, attended by large crowd of mourners. The public farewell processions started on Saturday with massive crowds paying their final tributes to the Grand Ayatollah, killed by the Israeli-US air raids in February. On Monday, the body of the former leader will be seen off in capital Tehran before being transferred to the religious city of Qom, home to the shrine of one of the Shia Muslim saints, on Tuesday. According to organizers, the funeral processions are scheduled to continue in Najaf and Karbala cities in neighboring Iraq, where the mausoleums of two Shia saints are located. In the final stage of the farewell, the body of the former leader will be laid to rest in the religious city of Mashhad. Last Friday, the state memorial was held with heads of state, parliament speakers, ministers, and special representatives of governments at the Tehran Musalla prayer hall behind me. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, in a post on X, expressed his gratitude to the representatives of the countries participating in the funeral memorial services. As the mourners who gathered to pay their respect to the late leader chanted slogans demanding revenge from Israel and the US, Tehran and Washington have deferred their mediated technical level talks to mid-July and completion of the week-long funeral processions. The temporary delay came after signs of progress in implementing the 17th June ceasefire agreement, known as the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding, aimed at ending the war in 60 days. Turaj Shiralilu from Tehran Grand Musalla for A News.
Pakistan is likely to host the next round of talks between the United States and Iran, although Switzerland remains an alternative venue. That's according to diplomatic sources cited by Pakistani media. The talks are expected to focus on Iran's nuclear program, the easing of US sanctions, and the release of Iranian assets frozen abroad. The agenda is also expected to include maintaining stability in the Strait of Hormuz, as well as adherence to the ceasefire by Israel and Hezbollah. It comes after earlier reports that the next round of talks could be held in Pakistan on July the 11th. To other news now, and China and Russia are stepping up military cooperation with a new round of joint naval exercises in the Yellow Sea. Our correspondent Abahaya Jafarova reports from Beijing.
China and Russia are set to begin their annual joint naval exercise Maritime Interaction 2026 off the Chinese port city of Qingdao. The drills will run from July 6th to the 13th in the Yellow Sea and will involve coordinated operations at sea and in the air. According to China's Minister of National Defense, the exercise is aimed at improving coordination between the two navies, responding to shared security challenges and maintaining regional peace and stability. Russian state media says a cruiser, a corvette, a diesel-electric submarine, and a rescue vessel from Russia's Pacific Fleet have already arrived in Qingdao to take part. Following the exercise, Chinese and Russian naval forces will carry out a joint maritime patrol in the Pacific Ocean, continuing a series of regular bilateral operations. While Beijing has not disclosed the number of personnel or equipment involved, analysts say the drills highlight the deepening strategic partnership between China and Russia amid heightened geopolitical tensions across the Indo-Pacific. Abahaya Jafarova, A News, Beijing, China.
Fresh diplomatic efforts are underway after President Trump spoke separately with the presidents of Russia and Ukraine. The calls focused on the war, broader regional developments and plans for future talks.
Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky held separate phone calls with US President Donald Trump on Saturday, discussing the Ukraine conflict, the situation in Iran, and upcoming diplomatic contacts. The Kremlin said Putin's call with Trump lasted about 85 minutes and described it as constructive. Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov said US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff will continue mediation efforts and visit Moscow at an appropriate time. Putin also reaffirmed his invitation for Trump to visit Russia. Zelensky said he discussed the latest battlefield developments and realistic prospects for a ceasefire during his phone call with Trump on US Independence Day. According to Zelensky, the two leaders agreed to hold a face-to-face meeting during the NATO summit in Ankara to continue consultations.
Kazakhstan is tightening control over fuel exports as supply disruptions continue to spread across Central Asia. The government says the measures are aimed at protecting the domestic market, while the impact is already being felt across neighbouring countries. Our correspondent Friza Kalimurzina reports from Almaty.
Is preparing to extend its ban on exports of gasoline, diesel and some other fuel products for another 6 months as disruptions linked to attacks on Russia's energy infrastructure continue to affect countries across Central Asia. The draft order published by the Energy Ministry allows exceptions for humanitarian aid and government-approved fuel deliveries. Officials say there is enough fuel for the domestic market and supplies remain stable. At the same time, Kazakhstan is tightening border controls. Since the beginning of the year, authorities have stopped nearly 600 attempts to smuggle fuel out of the country. Energy Minister Yerlan Akhenjanov says Russian drivers can still fill up at Kazakh petrol stations, but only into their vehicles' regular fuel tanks. The move comes as more Russian cars have been crossing into Kazakhstan in recent days. The decision also comes as Ukraine's attacks on Russia's energy infrastructure continue to affect the wider region. After a strike on Russia's Orenburg gas processing plant, Kazakhstan had to reduce output at one of its largest oil and gas fields. Production fell by around 25%, but officials say domestic gas supplies have not been affected. The impact is already being felt across Central Asia. Kyrgyzstan is facing shortages of some types of petrol and has asked 5 countries in the region for help with fuel supplies. More than 90% of the country's gasoline and diesel comes from Russia. Tajikistan, which imports 84% of its fuel from Russia, is also looking for alternative suppliers, including possible crude oil imports from Iran. Uzbekistan's national airline has reduced some flights because of jet fuel shortages and higher prices. While the disruption creates new challenges for the region, analysts say it could also open new export opportunities for Kazakhstan. According to Reuters, Moscow is considering buying around 50,000 tons of AI-92 gasoline from Kazakhstan to help cover shortages on the domestic market. Kazakh officials say they have not received an official request so far. Friza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Lawmakers are meeting in The Hague for the OSCE's annual parliamentary session, with global security and international cooperation high on the agenda. Azerbaijan's delegation used the forum to emphasise the importance of sovereignty, international law and responsible digital governance.
The 33rd annual session of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly is underway in The Hague, bringing together lawmakers from across the OSCE region to discuss global security, international law and cooperation. A delegation from Azerbaijan's Milli Majlis is taking part in the gathering. Addressing the session, the head of the delegation stressed the importance of the consistent application of international law and respect for state sovereignty.
The selective application of law, the double standards under which the same illegal act condemned in one place and tolerated in another, and the blatant disregard for the sovereign equality of states. What we uphold for one, we must uphold for all. Otherwise, we will erode the very order we claim to defend. For this reason, sovereignty and sovereign equality of states must remain our cardinal principles.
Mammadov also outlined Azerbaijan's efforts to balance security, development and human rights in the use of emerging technologies. He pointed to the Digital Development Council, which held its first meeting on June 29th under the chairmanship of Azerbaijan's first Vice President, Mehriban Aliyeva, as an example of a coordinated approach to digital governance in the OSCE region. He concluded by calling for stronger international cooperation to address emerging challenges in the digital sphere. The annual session will continue in The Hague through July 8th.
Albania's anti-government protests continued on Saturday, with tens of thousands of people marching through Tirana to demand political reform and the resignation of the government.
What began as opposition to plans for a luxury resort linked to Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of US President Donald Trump, has evolved into a broader movement against alleged corruption and Albania's political system. Tens of thousands of protesters marched through Tirana on Saturday, waving Albanian flags and chanting "Revolution" as they demanded the resignation of Prime Minister Edi Rama's government and sweeping reforms. Activists are calling the movement the Flamingo Revolution. It was initially sparked by plans for a luxury resort expected to cost around €5 billion. The project has drawn fierce criticism because it would be built near a protected wetland that is home to flamingos, seals and sea turtle nesting sites.
We want a better future. We want a future when foreigners cannot come and buy our country. We want to live as Europeans. We want to live with dignity.
Saturday's demonstration follows more than a month of daily protests in the capital. On Thursday, police used water cannon and tear gas to disperse crowds outside Parliament after protesters threw eggs and flour at officers and some lawmakers. Albanian media reported that 3 police officers and 1 protester were injured in the clashes. The government denies allegations of corruption.
Wildfires have spread through parts of southern Europe, forcing evacuations and drawing in international support, as extreme heat and strong winds fuel fast-moving blazes across Greece, Portugal and Spain.
Wildfires are continuing to spread across parts of southern Europe, forcing evacuations, damaging property and prompting large-scale firefighting efforts amid extreme heat. In Greece, a fast-moving blaze near Oreokastro, north of Thessaloniki, triggered emergency alerts on Saturday and forced residents in nearby areas to evacuate. Firefighters, supported by vehicles and volunteers, battled flames in forested hills as strong winds helped the fire spread. In Portugal, residents in the Carcosa area joined firefighters on the ground, helping supply water and assist efforts as wildfires threatened homes and forest land. The blaze, which began earlier in the week, has already burned thousands of hectares.
The situation we are living right now is particularly hard. The fire, the flames and the smoke are making conditions unbearable. Beyond the fear we all have, of course, of waking up and finding our homes in flames, there are several houses very close by. Mine is a little farther away, but it is surrounded by forest. Since the early hours of Thursday, we've been living a very difficult situation.
Further south in Vizela, Portuguese authorities are receiving support from Spain's military emergency unit, which has deployed personnel and equipment to help protect homes at risk. Italy has also sent firefighting aircraft as part of a wider European response. In Spain, crews are also battling active fires in the northeast, with officials warning that changing winds could push flames toward populated areas. Several restrictions and confinement orders remain in place as firefighters work to contain the blazes. Officials say prolonged heat and dry conditions are fueling the fires, with multiple countries relying on cross-border assistance to manage the escalating wildfire situation.
And finally, the Amu Darya River has sustained life across Central Asia for centuries. Today, some of its most important ecosystems are being protected in northwestern Uzbekistan. Our correspondent Sevil Rajapova visited the region. Now, just to let you know, the tour was organised under the Aral Sea Wetlands Project, led by Uzbekistan's National Committee on Ecology and Climate Change and the Global Environment Facility.
Stretching for roughly 2,500 kilometers, the Amu Darya is one of Central Asia's largest rivers. Rising in the Pamir Mountains, it crosses several countries before reaching the lower reaches of Uzbekistan. Along its Asian delta, the river continues to support unique ecosystems found nowhere else in the region. One of them is the Khorezm National Park, established in 2019 to protect the remaining Tugay forest, desert habitats and wetlands of the Amu Darya Delta. Covering more than 21,000 hectares, the park is home to over 110 bird species, as well as rare mammals, reptiles and fish that rely on the river's fragile ecosystems.
Launched in 2022, our project is funded by the Global Environment Facility and the United Nations Development Programme and is implemented jointly with the National Committee. Our project has 4 components. The first component is related to water, especially the lower reaches of the Amu Darya River and the pre-Aral region. This is the area we are focusing on. The second component is land. All these areas near the river and the neighboring territories are affected by degradation. Therefore, our task is to study mechanisms for combating land degradation. The third component is related to biodiversity. Protected natural areas are our main focus. Our main task is to help the country expand its protected natural areas and develop management plans for them. This includes understanding how these new protected areas should be managed. We also provide technical support to protected natural areas. In particular, the tower where we are located is 12.5 meters high. It provides an opportunity to observe and monitor protected natural areas. We have already installed 4 towers in 4 protected natural areas. The fourth component of our project includes activities related to water diplomacy. Beyond the technical aspects, last year we held an international forum dedicated to the preservation of the Amu Darya River and the proper management of its flow, creating a platform for dialogue. Dialogue is very important, and there are many activities in this area.
Further downstream in neighboring Kyrgyz, Pakistan, conservation efforts continue on an even larger scale. The lower Amu Darya Biosphere Reserve covers nearly 69,000 hectares and contains one of the largest remaining Tugal forest ecosystems in Central Asia. In 2021, the reserve joined UNESCO's World Network of Biosphere Reserves, recognizing its international importance for biodiversity conservation. Scientists have recorded more than 400 plant species and hundreds of animal species here. The reserve is particularly important for the protection of the Bukhara deer, with the world's largest population of the species found within its boundaries.
As the flow of the Amu Darya decreases year by year, drought conditions are becoming more severe. The Tugay forests are gradually drying out, and without periodic natural flooding, they cannot survive. To address this, we carry out artificial irrigation. Through the project, water is supplied to these areas every year, allowing us to irrigate around 100 to 150 hectares of forest. The water is directed to the site and retained there to support the ecosystem. Last year, 10 deer were transferred to the Khorezm National Nature Reserve. Because their population had increased significantly, some animals were also sent to the Tashkent Zoo.
Experts say Tugay forests are among the most threatened ecosystems in Central Asia. Dependent on seasonal flooding and river dynamics, they provide shelter for wildlife, help stabilize soils, and support the ecological balance of the Amu Darya Basin. Today, protected areas such as the Khorezm National Park and the lower Amu Darya Biosphere Reserve are helping safeguard these landscapes for future generations. It is Cyril Rajab reporting from Khorezm and Kyrgyz, Pakistan regions, Uzbekistan A-News.
Now it's time for all the news from the FIFA World Cup. The round of 16 kicked off yesterday with France and Morocco securing their places in the quarterfinals after defeating Paraguay and host nation Canada. Let's get some reaction from those who watched France and Paraguay face off in Philadelphia.
It was awesome. Mbappe, I knew he was going to score one, and he did. That was awesome. But Paraguay, they tried their best, but can't beat France, you know? They're going to win the World Cup, baby.
It was actually very quiet. I didn't feel the energy like you do with other games. Norway, Cabo Verde, you know, that was very energetic. Here, it was very quiet. I don't know, maybe because France was a little shocked that they were only up by one. And then Paraguay, I don't know, kind of like hoping that they don't get killed.
All right, let's go back a second, because if there's one game in this tournament so far that's going to go down in World Cup history, it's this one. Cape Verde, the smallest nation to play in a World Cup knockout match, pushed Lionel Messi and the reigning champions Argentina to the brink in extra time in one of the greatest underdog efforts the World Cup has ever seen. Let's get the reaction to it all from Pico Lopez, Cape Verde's Irish-born defender who was working as a mortgage advisor before he was recruited for the team on none other than LinkedIn.
Yeah, look, it's still quite fresh, so we're hurting at the moment. There's been great moments in the game. Sydney's goal was amazing. Obviously, we're disappointed probably to concede two from set pieces. I felt we've been really strong at that throughout the tournament. But look, this game is about moments. We had ours, they had theirs, and they probably had one more than us, like which ended the game for us. Like, but yeah, look, I'm really proud of this group, the character we've shown, the quality we've shown tonight as well. Like. That's us out there. That's what we wanted to be coming into this tournament, and I'm very happy about this group.
Farewell, Cape Verde. The underdogs the World Cup will never forget. Now, the ones to watch tonight are Norway versus Brazil, which kicks off at midnight Baku time. Could Erling Haaland pose a major threat to an injury-stricken Brazil? And for those of you who don't have work in the morning, England are taking on Mexico in the iconic high-altitude Azteca Stadium in Mexico City at 4 a.m. Baku time. Let's hear from England midfielder Jordan Henderson about how the team are feeling.
I think it's a huge occasion. It doesn't get much better or bigger than playing Mexico in Mexico City in this stadium. Yeah, no words really. It's just an incredible occasion for everyone, and for us as a team, it's about staying focused on what our objective is, and that's to come here and win the game. Of course, that comes with challenges. You know, Mexico are a very good side with very good players. It'll be a really tough test, but every game in the World Cup is difficult, and yeah, everybody's just looking forward to come and play this game for tomorrow, and I hope it brings the best out of us, and if it does, then I'm sure we can get a good result.
I'm very tempted to stay up and watch that game. That's your news for this hour. Stay tuned to A News for all of the latest updates and have a wonderful rest of your weekend.